Seeing his beloved son Brendan stabbed in a cold, calculated attack, Nick's world shatters in an instant. A surge of raw anger takes over, and without thinking about his own safety, he charges straight at the attacker. In the chaos, he has no idea that the gang had intentionally left one of their own behind, a sacrifice meant to test someone like him. Driven by that fury, Nick rushes in, determined to make them pay. As they struggle on the greasy asphalt, he manages to grab the attacker's hood and accidentally rips off the mask. For a brief moment under the harsh fluorescent lights, he clearly sees the man's face. Joe Darley. That image burns into his memory, something he will never forget. The attacker breaks free and disappears into the night, leaving behind a heavy, suffocating silence. Nick turns back, only to find Brendan no longer breathing. Somebody help me! At the hospital, the doctors do everything they can, pushing themselves to the limit, but it is not enough to save him.
Okay, get him, man. Get him. We're in the hospital now.
What breaks Nick and his wife even more is the truth of how Brendan died. It was not quick. The wound caused blood to fill his lungs, forcing him to spend his final moments struggling to breathe, trapped in unbearable pain. In that moment, Nick's grief transforms into something else, something solid and unshakable. A vow forms in his mind, quiet but absolute. The people responsible will suffer the same way his son did. This is death sentence. On the day of the preliminary hearing, the courtroom is filled with tension. When the judge turns to Nick and asks if he can confirm the identity of the killer, Nick takes a steady breath, looks straight at Joe, and chooses to lie. He claims the night was too dark, that his vision was too blurred to be certain. Deep down, he already understands how the system works. At best, someone like Joe would only get a few years. To Nick, that is not justice. Prison would only protect him. And Nick cannot accept the idea that his son's death ends with the killer sitting safely behind bars. So his decision is simple and terrifying. He pulls Joe out of the system and into his own hands. Moments later, the judge announces Joe's release due to lack of evidence. Outside the courthouse, his gang is already waiting, celebrating like they just won something. They laugh. They mock the system, completely unaware that Nick is standing in the shadows, watching them closely and memorizing every face. That moment quietly buries the life Nick once had. Not long ago, he was just a father who loved spending time with his two sons. The days passed quickly, and before he realized it, they had grown into teenagers. He had a stable career as a senior manager at a major insurance company and a family that felt complete. One evening after work, Brendan tells him about an upcoming school hockey tournament. For Nick, it is a proud moment. He was the one who introduced Brendan to the sport, and seeing him continue that path means everything. But that happiness does not last. After finding out where his son's killer lives, Nick heads home with one goal in mind: to find a weapon. His wife and child notice something is off, but they never imagine what he's about to do. Later that night, as Joe steps out to take out the trash, Nick sees his chance. He moves in, ready to end it right there. But things do not go smoothly. Another resident suddenly appears, almost ruining everything. Hesitation creeps in for just a second, and that is enough for Joe to react. The weapon falls to the ground, and Joe quickly reaches for it. In that brief moment, the situation flips. But just before it slips out of control, Nick manages to regain the upper hand. Before heading home, Nick stops by a canal to dispose of the evidence. With his revenge finally carried out, he feels a sense of relief, but it is mixed with guilt. No matter the reason, this is the first time he has taken a life. At the same time, the gang's leader, Billy, is seen arriving at a workshop to hand over the profits from his drug business. The man he meets turns out to be his own father. Their relationship is distant and strained, shaped by Billy's reckless lifestyle and the way he wastes his money. After that, Billy returns to his headquarters, where his men are already waiting with shocking news. Joe is dead. And the truth hits even harder when it is revealed that Joe was his younger brother. Meanwhile, Nick tries to return to his normal routine. But the next day, Detective Wallace pays him a visit to inform him about Joe's death. Nick becomes uneasy, knowing his hands still carry the marks of what he did the night before. Not long after, Billy and his crew gather at a bar to mourn Joe while also trying to figure out who is responsible. At first, they suspect a rival gang. But then someone mentions a witness who saw a well-dressed man at Joe's apartment that night. From that detail alone, Billy begins to piece everything together. Later that day, after finishing work, Nick stops by a pharmacy to buy fresh bandages. But his movements have already been tracked. Billy and his men find him and move in, planning to kill him right there on the street. Nick reacts just in time and manages to escape. A frantic chase begins, and in his panic, he stumbles more than once. Behind him, Billy keeps firing without hesitation. After running through the streets, Nick finally makes it into a parking building where his car is located. Thinking quickly, he sets off multiple car alarms to create confusion. Even so, Billy sends one of his men to the upper level where Nick is hiding. With no clear way out and armed enemies closing in, Nick is forced to fight back. He manages to ambush one of them and takes him down. Gunfire erupts again, forcing Nick to hide inside a car. The situation quickly spirals, leaving him trapped with nowhere to run. His body struggles to keep up, and breaking free from his attacker is not easy. In the middle of the struggle, the handbrake suddenly gives way, and the car begins to roll. Slowly at first, then uncontrollably, the vehicle moves until it crashes off the edge of the parking structure. At the last second, Nick jumps out and survives the fall. Moments later, police sirens echo in the distance. Realizing the risk, Billy calls off the pursuit. Nick takes the chance and escapes in his car. Not long after, the police arrive at the scene and discover a broken piece of a hockey stick. It is the same object Nick used during the fight. At the same time, even though Billy fails to catch him, he finds the briefcase Nick dropped during the chase. Inside it, there is a wallet containing all the information he needs to track him down. The next day, one of Billy's men shows up at Nick's office. Security is present in the lobby, but they fail to stop him from going upstairs. Surprisingly, he is not there to cause chaos. He simply delivers a package. When Nick opens it, he finds his own briefcase. But inside, there is something far more unsettling. A photo of his family, along with a phone number. Feeling a wave of panic, Nick calls the number, only to be connected directly to Billy. The message is clear. A life must be repaid with a life. Terrified, Nick immediately checks on his wife. He does not stop there and quickly reaches out to Detective Wallace for help. When he gets home, he carefully searches every corner, trying to make sure no one is lurking nearby. At the same time, Wallace begins to piece everything together. She realizes that Nick is the one who killed Joe and the man behind the incident at the parking structure. But Nick keeps everything to himself, knowing that admitting the truth would only lead him straight to prison. That night, before going to bed, his wife reflects on what he has done. She is shocked, but she does not blame him. In her eyes, it is something a father would do. Meanwhile, Wallace only assigns 2 officers to guard the house, believing Billy's threat is nothing more than intimidation. But they are wrong. By the time the gang arrives, both officers are already dead, and the house turns into a battlefield. Gunfire erupts again and again. Nick manages to dodge the attacks and fights back with everything he has. But in the end, none of it matters. Billy has been targeting his family all along. That night, Nick loses everything. His family is slaughtered without mercy, and he is left behind with a bullet wound in his stomach. Despite his severe injuries, Nick survives. But mentally, he is completely broken. In a single night, he has lost his wife and his child. The next day at the hospital, Detective Wallace visits him. Instead of taking responsibility for failing to protect his family, she places the blame on Nick, accusing him of starting a war with the gang. When Nick learns that his youngest son is still alive, he immediately gets out of bed and goes to see him for himself.
Hey, come on. Wait a second now.
Lucas!
It's all right.
Lucas!
Let him go.
But the condition he finds is heartbreaking. Lucas is in critical condition, trapped in a coma, and even the doctors are unsure if he will ever wake up. Standing there, Nick is overwhelmed with guilt. Not just for what happened, but for the distance he kept all these years. He realizes he spent so much time focusing on Brendan, sharing the same passion, that he never truly built the same connection with Lucas. After seeing his son, Nick makes a decision. He leaves the hospital, determined to avenge his wife. This time, things are different. He has nothing left to lose. He stops by the bank and withdraws all his savings, preparing himself for what comes next. With the help of an informant, he tracks down the location of the public phone Billy used earlier. But getting information is not easy. Even after being bribed, the bartender refuses to cooperate. Left with no choice, Nick forces him to talk.
Hey, fuck you. Back it up. Hey.
While the man does not know where Billy is, he gives up the address of one of his associates. Before making his move, Nick knows he needs to be ready. That same day, he visits an illegal weapons dealer, who turns out to be Billy's own father. Neither of them recognizes each other at first. Carrying a bag full of cash, Nick is welcomed without suspicion. He is offered a variety of weapons, but chooses a shotgun and 2 pistols. Because he pays more than asked, he even receives extra supplies. But just as he is about to leave, the atmosphere shifts. Bones realizes who Nick is, the man responsible for his son's death. Surprisingly, instead of reacting with anger, Bones lets him go. To him, his sons are already lost, and he no longer sees them as family. Nick is not a trained fighter. He has never handled weapons like this before, and he learns everything from a manual. His body is still injured, far from fully healed. But none of that matters. The pain he carries inside is far greater than anything physical. Once everything is prepared, he is ready. That night, Nick goes alone to the home of one of Billy's men, a guy named Hiko. Hiko is heavily intoxicated and can barely believe what he is seeing, since everyone thought Nick was already dead. Without hesitation, Nick attacks him and forces him to reveal Billy's location. Even after giving up the address, Heko is made to call Billy and pass along a message. Not long after, Billy is visited by his father. Despite his cold attitude, Bones still cares about his son and even tries to convince him to leave the city. But Billy, already fed up, responds by killing him on the spot. That same night, one of the gang members stands guard outside their base. As he casually smokes, a car suddenly speeds toward him and hits him without warning. In a single move, Nick takes him out, and that is where it all begins. From that moment on, it turns into a full-scale massacre. Everyone inside that building becomes a target. The gang fights back with gunfire, but it makes no difference. Nick keeps pushing forward. He is no longer afraid of dying. Even without proper training, his determination outweighs everything the gang throws at him. Not long after, Billy arrives at the scene. By now, he only has 2 men left. They search desperately for Nick, but even with the numbers on their side, it changes nothing. Nick has been hunting for Billy the entire time. After searching through the building, he finally finds a room that looks like an old church. But the moment he steps inside, he is ambushed from both sides and shot repeatedly. The firefight leaves everyone badly injured. Blood is everywhere. Billy loses several fingers, making it impossible for him to keep fighting. Nick is also severely wounded, with a bullet grazing his neck. For a moment, it seems like it is over. Billy believes the fight has ended, but then Nick pulls out a hidden weapon and finishes him. With every enemy gone, Nick leaves the building, barely able to stand. He returns home, injured and exhausted, just to watch old recordings of his family one last time. Not long after, Detective Wallace arrives. But in the middle of that emptiness, Nick receives unexpected news. His youngest son has finally woken up from the coma. And that is where the story ends. So the moral of the story is if you skip therapy and go full revenge mode, you'll unlock unlimited chaos but also ruin literally everything. So maybe just take a deep breath first.